Hi everyone, Beth here. If you are struggling to find your homeschool vibe and are looking for ways to get your kids to get their schoolwork done, or ways for you to keep your sanity as a homeschool parent, or how to handle your many responsibilities while still feeling relaxed and loving homeschooling, then my book, Find Your Homeschool Vibe, might be just what you're looking for. In my book, I share how to shift your mindset to help you as the parent stay focused on the point of all of this, which is the love of learning. I also share some tried and true homeschool mom life hacks for every day. You can find the book in the show notes or by searching for Find Your Homeschool Vibe on Amazon. Back to the show. Hi everyone. Before the episode begins, we just want to remind you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Look for Peaceful Homeschool Podcast.
Remember, please rate and review on iTunes and Spotify, which helps the podcast get noticed by more people, which helps more homeschool families.
Don't forget to check the show notes for other ways to support the podcast.
Let's get the show started. Hello. You're listening to Peaceful Homeschool Podcast. I'm Emma.
And I'm Beth.
Hi, Beth.
Hi, Emma.
So today we have a special guest with us. It is Teresa Peters from Discern To Learn. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're so glad you're here. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, whatever, and then what your passion is, what you're here to share with us today?
I am a mom of two kids. I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old son, and we homeschooled for 16 years. I'm an advocate for homeschoolers of all kinds, and specifically those who embrace a Christian worldview. And I have a history of teaching in the public school system as a substitute teacher. And then I've been mentoring students and teaching students for the last 6 years privately to homeschool students, starting with, of course, my children's friends. And so we did some classes with them so that they could have a class experience. And I have a big dream, and my dream is to change the world.
Yes.
So I'm always telling my students, dream big. And so that's my big dream. I want to change the world, and I do it by changing the way students learn and the things they learn and their success habits. So that builds confidence in their life so that they realize that they have the ability to control some pieces, and they don't have to be aimless, but they can have agency in their lives. And they can learn whatever they need to learn to achieve whatever dreams they have.
I love that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, thank you.
Specifically about what?
Specifically language arts, because I really believe that language arts skills are life skills. So the skills that you learn in language arts, if you haven't got them, you can't succeed in any career. So you really have to be able to be a persuasive speaker and a good writer and a leader, and all those pieces come through discussion and critical thinking.
That is awesome. So you mentioned language arts. So we kind of are doing a series on different subjects. And so we thought it would be great to have you share with us maybe some tips, some things that really can help families who, that maybe the parent themselves struggles with language arts instruction or understanding, and what are like some really great helpful things that you could share with our listeners about how to help their family like just engage in language arts and really embrace it and love it.
Well, I think it really depends on the age of your child, obviously. But right from the beginning, it's really important just to have a home that's discussing and talking about things, instead of it being just authoritarian. In this house, we think this, well, why do we think that? When children learn to question and ask those questions, then we teach them how to find the answers to those questions. And so being able to discuss those things, that's a huge part of language arts success. But also having a family that like reads and discusses books, discusses literature. If you want your student to love something, the best thing you can do is love it yourself. So if you want them to love reading, then let them catch you reading. If you want them to love writing, let them catch you writing. Let them catch you involved in all of those things. And if it's something that you struggle with, isn't that empowering to your student if they see you say, look, I don't really understand punctuation. I'm going to take a course. I'm going to learn about this, right? So if we can have that kind of a home, then we're going to inspire our students that they have control as well in the things that they learn. And if they have gaps or places where they find that they need to learn, then they can learn. So part of that is the agency piece, but also it's just seeing and setting a model for our children to be involved in the kinds of activities that are going to make them successful in language arts. Specifically, being able to introduce our students to more difficult books, so doing read alouds, those kinds of things, or if you don't think you're a good reader, listen to the book. LibriVox.org has so many books on there, like pretty much everything that you can think of that's a classic, because it's all public domain. So you can get everything for free. I know that getting audiobooks is crazy expensive. It's absolutely ridiculous, I think, considering you can't even sell it. You just have it and then it's gone. And so being able to listen to books, have discussions about the ideas that are in there and how the author makes you feel, or how did they make you feel that way? Those kinds of questions. And when it comes to writing, just find the resources that you need to improve your skills and reach out. For some parents, they really struggle with, like, as students get older, how to grade an essay, how to write an essay. There are lots of curriculums out there for students that actually like have all those things. And I know on my website, I for sure have freebies on like how to grade and, all of those types of things. So there's so many resources out there.
So I wanted to ask too, when I first was teaching, language arts to my kids, which, like you said before the podcast, I have a son who is 20, a daughter who's 18 with autism and several different learning disabilities. And then I have a 12-year-old daughter. And so when I was first teaching from birth, all of the language arts and reading and stuff that we do from the very beginning, and all of the talking, so much talking about everything we do. But when I first encountered, as my son got a little bit older, the word rubric, I was like, I am not sure that I know what that means. I'm going to look that up, which thankfully we have the ability to look things up, in seconds now. But can you share with us, because I think that would be helpful to parents who have only younger kids that are starting out with homeschooling, and kind of even those moving into the older years if they haven't yet encountered that. Can you share with our listeners what a rubric is and how they can use that in their homeschooling with their kids?
Oh, rubrics. I had no idea when my kids were young, and I wish I did. And they are amazing. If I would have learned so much more in public school if they used rubrics.
Yeah.
They sort of do now, and I'm always telling my public school students that I tutor, ask for the marking rubric. You should always know what they're going to mark you on. And so what a marking rubric is it's just an outline of what you're expecting so that a student can achieve success. So when they get a perfect on the marking rubric, that doesn't mean their writing is perfect. It means they did all the things that you set out for them to do. So they're not going to get their master's thesis based on that paper that they wrote in grade 7, but they can still get perfect. They can win the game, so to speak, right? Because every student wants to win.
Yeah.
So you want it to be only have things on your marking rubric that you've already taught, that you know they should know how to do. And you can start with marking rubrics from like very, very young. So when you're teaching them how to write a sentence, a sentence needs a capital and a period, a subject and a verb. Then you make compound sentences, so you like connect them together. Every time you add a new skill, you add that to your marking rubric. So if they're writing one sentence in kindergarten, maybe even, or grade 1, you can say, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And at that point, it says tick boxes, right? So you give it to them, and now they mark their own and they tick it off, and then you mark it and you tick it off. And they see, wow, I did it. I checked all the boxes, I got perfect. Now when you get to like middle school, high school, then you start adding more and more things, and you start asking them to do extras to get that perfect grade. And you can also add a subjective section that's just how well, in a range you believe that they have written. So for my students, I say, if you get perfect in the subjective range, that means you're writing beyond your grade level, beyond my expectation of you,
Right.
which means next time you have to write more, right? You have to write better next time subjectively for me to give you a perfect again in that section. So just to always have a place where they can improve or to grow. And when you do a marking rubric, then you can say, well, I noticed that you got this wrong. Let's work on this piece. Sometimes you'll give them a marking rubric. You think that they know all of the things on it, and you discover, no, they really didn't get it. And then you can go back and reteach that piece. So marking rubrics are a great way for students to learn how to write and feel that they have a possibility of succeeding.
Yeah. I think too that, I mean, I was going to say a lot of kids, but I think a lot of people really do well when when there are known expectations versus unknown expectations. And that when, in life in general, when we have known expectations, we say, aha, I know what I need to do. I know what you want from me, and I know how to reach that expectation. As opposed to when we're just like, well, I wanted you to clean the house, but, I see that there's still dust underneath the couch in this one little corner. And they're like, yeah, I didn't know that was the expectation. So I think for some kids, especially, like I have a child, like I said, who has special needs. For her, knowing what expectations are, that's what she wants. She's like, I don't want this willy-nilly idea of write something cool. Like, she wants to know what to write, how to write it, exactly the steps that she can take to mark those boxes to say, I know your expectations and I know what you wanted from me, and I did it. And now I'm awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Perfect.
so do you have a website? Do you have a program that you offer? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I do have a website. It's discerntolearn.com. And of course, the two is the word because I'm a language arts person. And I have kind of an interesting approach to my program. So what I have is I have like a tutoring path and I have a language arts path. So the tutoring might be for everybody, not just homeschoolers. But if parents or students are feeling they're not quite prepared for a language arts class, or maybe they're just not feeling confident, or they're struggling with the day-to-day success habits, setting goals, getting things done on time, then I recommend they start in a tutoring program. So the tutoring program just teaches success skills and either paragraphs or essays. And then I have like a full language arts program. So grade 5-6 introduction for one term, grade 6-8 is a 3-term, like a full year, and 9-12 is a full year. And so then I also offer a like 1-term fiction. So parents kind of get to mix and match. So there's 3 terms offered in a year, and they can take a tutoring and a language arts and a fiction. Because, as homeschoolers, we want to have control over everything.
Yep.
So parents can completely do that, and they can make it perfect for their student and not what I think they need or what, someone else thinks. And I actually use Sharon Watson's curriculum. So for all of my language arts programs, not the tutoring, but the grade 5-6, the 6-8, and the 9-12, I use her curriculum. So especially 6-8 is the jump in program, and 9-12 for writing is power in your hands. And then also when we're doing literature, this year it's my own literature that I have designed to go with it because unfortunately Sharon Watson's not making another literature right away. So I only have 2 options. So I've done those 2. So I had to make another one. So this coming year it's my literature, and then we'll go back again to illuminating literature. She has amazing curriculum, and I'm not an affiliate of hers, but she allows me to use her curriculum, and I really appreciate it. Nice. It's so straightforward and easy to use. It's a great option for anyone who's just looking for something inexpensive, because one textbook lasts you a number of years, and it's written to the student step by step. Everything's there. It's wonderful.
And so for your classes, do kids log in a certain day of the week, a certain time of that day, every day, or every week? Or is it like they just log in, they listen to you, and then they, provide some sort of feedback in some way?
Okay, yeah. I have a system of virtual classes once a week, plus ongoing support. So students, I think, need more than just one class a week and get your homework done. You know, they have homework for every day. So we have a learning management system, and they hand in their homework. All the feedback and grading is included, and a report at the end of each term. And then also on top of that, they can book calls with me where they can have one-on-one help. So if they're struggling with something or they don't understand, it's so much better to just get the answers than like worry about it and hand it in and not do well. Like, just
Sure.
It's really important, and it's such an important life skill to realize you need help and ask for it. So that's one of the things that I offer. So it's like a virtual class with constant support, and it also involves a habit tracker. So one of the things we do before every single term is I have a vision call with the student where we dream big and we find out what their goals are, and we backtrack it and find out, well, what can you do right now to work on your goals?
That's awesome.
And we also talk about how these language arts goals are going to help them reach their real goals. So the goals that they have set, so that they can see that the tasks that they're doing now actually are going to matter in their lives, so that it's part of their agenda and not something that's just pushed on them.
That's super cool. I think that's important too with our kids, that they understand we're not just like, here, take all this knowledge because you are supposed to learn it, and then there's no relevance to actual life for them. So I think it's super important for them to see, and with my kids, I've always done that, which is, what are your goals? How do we work backwards from that to make sure you are doing things now to work toward meeting what those goals are, whether those are small goals, you know, this month or this year or down the road, what it is you're looking to achieve. So I love that. I love that you do that with your students. It's awesome. Can you share with our listeners, because we do have listeners who, you know, are starting out from the very beginning, or maybe they're coming from public school and they're like, I never meant to homeschool, I never wanted to homeschool, but here's what we're doing now. What is the difference between English, language arts, reading? I don't know if there's anything else I should throw in that question, but I see people asking like, well, wait, did you mean English? Did you mean language arts? Whatever. And can you just tell our listeners the differences between those things?
I actually had someone ask that this week. Oh, you mean my student needs language? ? Arts ? And I went, oh, they just don't understand.
Right.
And I thought, oh, I guess because my son was in public school for a little while, you know, I just saw the word, right? So, I mean, I understood. And that's an absolutely understandable confusion because most of us grew up in public school and we called it English.
Yep.
We went to English class, right? So in English class, we learned spelling, grammar, vocabulary, punctuation, writing, literature, or we hopefully learned all of those things. And so those are the package that come together that make language arts. It's all of the arts that are encompassed by the English language. So when parents, especially new homeschoolers, my best advice is you do not need a curriculum for every piece of language arts. You do not need a reading curriculum and a vocabulary and a grammar and a writing and a literature. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's too much. You don't have all week just to do language arts. As fun as that would be, I think. But you know, it's just not something that you need to do. And so curriculum is big business. So just remember that everyone wants to have a value added package, and value added means time added.
Yeah. That's really good advice. And I think too, you know, in terms of talking about new homeschoolers, that they do think like, oh, I do need to teach my kids spelling. Oh, I do need to teach. Oh, and what about literature? And what about grammar? And thinking if those are each a separate thing, oh my gosh, I would be so overwhelmed. I would not want to homeschool, and I would be like, my kids need to go back to school because they can learn all that stuff. Yeah, that would be terrible. Okay, so in terms of language arts, you know, encompassing writing, do you have some tips that you could share with our listeners about just getting them started writing as little kids, as, you know, younger kids, whatever? What do you do to foster that in them?
This is a common problem. everyone, even I have it. I get a blank page in front of me and I stall. And I write for magazines.
Mm-hmm.
So that's crazy because I go through the same frustration every time that every student does, but at least I can identify. So first of all, I would say when your students are really young, even before they're writing, you can be doing this. Writing is just storytelling. So you make up a sentence of the story and they make up the next sentence and then someone else makes up the next sentence and you can make the craziest, zaniest story happen. As they get older, you might use a writing prompt, you can use a picture, tell me what's happening in this picture. Although you have to be careful if you're doing fiction. Tell me what's happening in this picture. They're going to say, in this picture, the man is doing this. And that's not really what you're looking for, right? So make a story about this picture. And so fiction and essay writing, they sort of overlap, and fiction writing really helps with essay writing because it helps students to think outside of the math box a little bit. In a lot of ways, essay writing is sort of like math. You plug in all the pieces in the right place and you end up with an essay.
Mm-hmm.
And when you take a little bit of fiction and you work on those skills a little bit, all of a sudden your essay writing turns into something far more than that. So they learn to be a little more creative in the way they write. So if you're talking fiction writing, it's so much fun to do those kinds of like story things, to make up a story at the store, at the bus stop. What do you think their life story could be? Just, people watch.
Yeah.
Why do you think that person's just passed us like that? Like, where are they going and what happened to them before? Why is that person driving so slowly? That's how I managed my frustration on the road.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not going to be angry. Maybe that person just like, had an accident yesterday. I don't know, right? So, having those conversations and being able to make up stories about things, those are good ways to start stories. When you get into more academic writing and you're looking at essays, it is really helpful to learn essay outlining because it just helps you to be more organized with your thoughts and more persuasive about them, to be able to prove a point.
Mm-hmm.
And so essay outlining is really an important skill. It's the math piece of language arts. And so when people say they can't write essays, I say, are you a math person? Yeah. Well, then you can absolutely write essays. They will be like a dream to you. And punctuation's easy and grammar's easy because it's like math. It's just right or wrong. So writing essays to get started and come up with an idea, that's tough. So you just brainstorm. And thankfully we have Google. I don't know what we would do without Google. And as a parent, I have actually a student, but she's a writer and she's always keeping a notebook of things she wants to write about. Another way Sharon Watson says in one of her textbooks is grab a newspaper and read it cover to cover, like front to back, and look for some sentence or some weird thing in it or something that makes you upset or happy or sad and write about that.
That's a great idea.
Like, there are so many places. Like, the world is full of ideas. So that's one way to get started.
Yeah. I love that. A lot of that stuff that you were saying, I was like, oh, this is all stuff we've done throughout my kids' lives. And I mean, it's good to hear other people say that too, because I'm like, oh, maybe we're not crazy that we make up all the stories about the person behind us or next to us or whatever. Okay, so do you have any tips for kids that have special needs? For example, my 18-year-old has autism. So teaching her all of the things has been different and unique in its own way. And, I think for her, writing is a big stumbling block because it takes not only her ideas, which if I ask her to say out loud, she can do great at. However, if I ask her to write it down, it includes the pressure that you put on your pencil to make the pencil work. It includes making the letters form within the space that they need to form. It includes, uppercase and lowercase and punctuation and all these other things that make it very difficult for her. So I've had to do a lot of workarounds with her to make it so that she could write in a way. So do you have any tips that you could share? I probably shared mine before, but I would love to hear from you about that.
Sure. I think, there's a few things. First of all, I would say look at long-term life skills.
Mm-hmm.
How is my student going to be able to work this out in the real world and teach those skills?
Yeah.
Because in the end, that's what we're equipping our kids for, is the real world. So if in the real world, for her to be able to compose an email or write a letter, voice to text is good, then why not? You know, it's
Yeah.
a wonderful thing that we live in this world. There are so many options. If you know, it's obviously still important that students learn to like write something down, but you know, if they type better or text better, or you know, then that's okay too. But if we, the other second thing we can do is we can separate the physical writing
Mm-hmm.
from the composition piece. So you say she can, you know, come up with the ideas and talk about them. So then you can scribe, you can do voice to text, you can do all of those pieces. And then when you want to work on handwriting, just work on handwriting. Because in our brains, we have all of these pieces coming together with writing. And this is something that makes it very difficult for students, especially when they're just starting. So maybe grade 2, 3, 4, 5. There are pieces of their brain that just aren't completely developed yet. And to pass the information back and forth fluidly between them is really difficult. So when you're writing, you are being creative. You are, if you're actually physically writing it down with your hand or typing, then you have those skills, right? So you know, like you said, you have the pressure on the paper, you have to make it look right, you have to spell it right. That's a completely different part of your
Right.
brain. Spelling, grammar and spelling are in the same section of the brain, but you know, you have to like internalize all of those rules for it to just come out right on the paper. And students see us all of the time just do it. And so when they can't just do it and write a sentence right away with a capital and a period and a comma and spelling right, they think that there's something wrong with them.
Yep.
And they don't understand that we all worked through that process. So teaching that it's a process. There's all these little pieces and it's okay to edit. It's okay to go back and fix and change. So that's a huge thing with writing, is all the pieces of the brain and synthesizing all of that. And students that have some kind of learning difference, it's really even more difficult because pieces of that puzzle are just so much more challenging. And I would say, if there are pieces that you need to outsource because you're not able, see if you can find a way to do that. So there are things that we are all capable of and feel confident in, and then we all have areas that we are less confident in. I so wish that I had outsourced math. I look back and shake my head. It would have been so much better for my students if I had just outsourced it.
Yeah.
Just found someone else to teach them math. They would have learned so much better. But the same thing with a disability or a learning difference is to, if you need help, it's okay to reach out and get help. Homeschoolers don't have to learn alone. They don't have to teach alone, and they don't have to be an island.
Yeah, I love that. I think that too, when new homeschoolers are starting out, they can feel overwhelmed or even worried that they should not homeschool because they don't know every single thing there is to know, and that they then can't teach every single thing that they think their child needs to know. So I love that you brought that up, because absolutely, like, my daughter's been in tons of therapies for a good part of her life, and that has was a world changer for her at all. And it was definitely things that I could not have taught her because I didn't have the knowledge and the many years of training that her speech therapist has or had, or that her occupational therapist had. So I love that you mentioned that, because for sure we don't have to, I always say we don't have to know it all. We just know we just have to know where to find it all. And that's all that we need.
Right.
And yeah, it's very important. Okay. So my 12-year-old is learning all about some really annoying things that, even though I love to write and it's something that I can seem like I do well at, these things, I'm like, I could tell you everything that's wrong here without knowing these exact terms. So do you feel like, as a language arts professional, Do you feel like people need to know how to diagram sentences? Because I know there's a camp on both sides. Do you feel like people need to know the terms past participle, or I don't know, interrogative, or whatever else we were talking about this morning when we were talking about grammar? What's your feelings on that?
Oh, that's really putting me out there, Emma.
Oh, go. I mean, we're just listening as a parent, and you can be in either camp, and it doesn't matter. Our listeners are here to just hear what you have to say.
It's okay. I'm going to be out there right away because
Do it.
actually I'm writing an article for a magazine on this right away.
Yes.
So, to grammar or not to grammar? Okay. Grammar is vitally important for punctuation. It's very important that students know where commas go, where periods go. Can you know all of those things without knowing the names of the parts of speech? Absolutely. Yes, you can. In my classes,
I'm like, oh yeah.
I do not teach tons of grammar. I teach when I get to editing and we're talking about commas, I teach the pieces they have to know to do the commas. That's it.
Yeah.
When I'm in tutoring and I have students that are really struggling with not putting periods, I don't know what this is. They just have this like stream of consciousness and they just keep writing and writing and writing and writing. I make them learn the subject and the verb, highlight all the subjects and verbs, and find out where these sentences end. Like, then you would know where the sentences end.
Right.
Because every sentence or every independent clause has a subject and a verb. And then if you're not connecting them with a connector, then you have a problem. So those pieces. Do I personally love diagramming? Yes, I do. I purposely did not choose a certain language arts curriculum for my children, even though it was one of the best on the market, because of all the diagramming in it. And I said, I went to university for language arts and I didn't learn how to diagram, and I never learned how to diagram, and I don't think you need to either. And then my daughter was struggling and she had some issues and some gaps, and she has her own things going on, as everyone does. And then I changed to a different curriculum and there was some diagramming in it. And when I started to learn it, the light bulb just went off in my head and I went, oh, I get this in ways that I didn't get it before. And can I really explain it? Not entirely. Can I diagram massive, like, the Declaration of Independence? Not even close. But basic diagram, I think personally is fun. I'm kind of an artistic person, so I think it's kind of fun. And sometimes it explains things. But if I believe my best advice to parents is if you have a student who is really struggling with memorizing all those terms and being able to diagram, being able to pick them all out, it's not particularly necessary in the real world.
Okay. I mean,
and
you're getting no arguments here. What were you going to say?
In the real world, I always shoot for the real world skills, right? So, because I tell my students, I'm not going to give you work that doesn't matter. So, in the real world, I don't need to know all of those things, except now I do because I teach my students. So, in the real world, most people don't need to know, but they probably do need to know which is like the subject of the sentence and what the verb is.
Right.
But they don't need all the parts and all the things.
Yeah.
Now, if you compare that to public school, they expect you to know all the, nouns and verbs and adjectives and adverbs and all of those pieces, right?
For sure.
So.
Okay, well, and I mean, I will tell you that as we were sitting there and my husband was like, wait, you're not making her like delve deeper into this. And I was like, she understands the basics of the writing and how to make the sentence work. I am not going to make her memorize these terms that I don't feel are super important. So I'm in that camp too.
Okay.
And I know where Beth falls in that camp for sure. Okay, so I know we are getting toward the end of our time here. So we are going to have links for Discern to Learn. You're going to send us everything we need, and we're going to share that with our people. Can you just tell us what is one of your favorite things about teaching, homeschoolers, about homeschooling your own kids, or about teaching language arts?
My absolute favorite thing are the conversations that I can have with students and the relationships that I can build with them. And to know them as people and to just encourage them to dig deeper. So to ask hard questions and do hard things. And it's odd because many people wouldn't even consider that part of language arts. But I think that, especially since, for me, I have a Christian worldview and, my courses are a Christian worldview. That's huge to be able to look at life and ask questions and know what you believe, and to be able to be persuasive. So having conversations with students teaches them to be persuasive speakers. And so we can ask questions and we can talk. So we do a lot of discussion, and my husband gets frustrated with the level of discussion around our table. He's a more black and white person. He's like, okay, we all agree, so can we stop talking about this? but new things come up all the time, and well, did you read this in the news? I mean, my kids are older, so I mean, they can you believe this happened and someone said that, and we get to talk about it, and we get to talk about and have all those conversations. So the critical thinking piece, the being able to listen to media and question it, to be able to read books and question it, and come up with what the message really is and how we can counteract that message. How can we make a difference in our lives and in other people's lives?
I love that. You are speaking our language for sure. Like, so awesome. Okay, Teresa Peters from Discern to Learn, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a pleasure speaking with you. Like I said, we will link you up, and then everybody can reach out and get some more information from you. I also saw you have some freebies and stuff on your website, so that'll be great for our listeners to be able to look at as well.
Yeah, thank you
Absolutely.
so much. It was
Thank you.
Great to meet you.
Thanks so much for having me, and I hope no one ever has to learn alone.
I thought you were going to say, I hope no one ever has to learn how to diagram a sentence. No.
I'm
kidding. Okay, thanks so much, Teresa.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you find value in our podcast and would like to support the show and help cover our monthly costs, we have several ways to do that.
You could become a $3 a month supporter, shop our merchandise store or our show sponsors, and rate and review on iTunes and Spotify.
Thank you for your continued support of our show and for sharing it.
Yes, thank you.